Chapter 1. The Housekeeper's Son. I used to believe silence was safety. When you're the housekeeper's son in a mansion full of people who wear diamonds like armor, silence is the only weapon you have left. Every morning, I'd wake up before dawn to help my mother prepare breakfast for the Laurents, the family she served for 20 years. The smell of coffee and butter filled the kitchen while she hummed softly, her hands moving faster than thought. She never complained, not even when her fingers cracked from the cold. "Keep your head down, Eli," she used to say. "Don't give them a reason to look at you." I listened, most of the time. Elena Laurent was different when we were kids. Back then, she'd sneak into the kitchen, hair messy from sleep, giggling as she stole pieces of toast. We'd play hide and seek in the back garden. She'd laugh when I caught her, shouting, "You're faster, 'cause you're poor." Even then, I didn't know whether to laugh or be ashamed, but childhood fades. By the time we turned 16, she had learned her mother's tone, the sharp, polished one that could slice through air. The day I tried to greet her in front of her friends, she looked me up and down and said, "You shouldn't be here." Those words stayed with me longer than her smile ever did. I still remember the dinner party that changed everything. The Laurents were hosting a charity gala, all gold chandeliers and fake laughter. I was helping my mother carry trays when Elena caught sight of me. She was wearing a red gown, her hair glowing under the lights. She looked like a dream, and I looked like a stain on it. "Eli," she said, her voice loud enough for the guests to hear. "You're still here? I thought house staff weren't allowed during dinner." Laughter rippled around the table. My face burned. I froze, clutching the silver tray so tightly that my hands shook. One of the guests, a young man in a tuxedo, chuckled. "Who is he?" Elena smiled. "Just the housekeeper's son." My mother appeared beside me so quickly I barely saw her move. "Eli, take the next tray out," she said gently, her voice trembling. I obeyed without a word, walking away as their laughter echoed behind me. Later that night, I found her sitting by the sink, tears silently rolling down her face. I hated that she cried so quietly, as if even her pain had to stay hidden. "She didn't mean it," I said. "I didn't believe it." "She's just young," my mother whispered, wiping her eyes. "Don't let it change you." But it did. The next morning, I couldn't even look Elena in the eye when she walked past the kitchen. She didn't look at me either. From that day, she pretended I didn't exist. I watched her life from the shadows, her friends, her perfect smile, the way she always walked like she owned the air around her. Sometimes she'd drop a careless "thank you" when I carried her shopping bags. Other times, she didn't say anything at all. And yet, even as I told myself I hated her, I couldn't stop remembering the girl who used to chase butterflies with me in the garden. One evening, I overheard Mrs. Laurent talking in the study. "That boy should be grateful," she said, her voice sharp and dry. "We feed him, we shelter him. He should remember his place." I stood outside the door, gripping the edge of the frame until my nails dug into the wood. My place. I had no idea how many times I'd hear those words before I stopped believing them. That night, my mother cooked extra rice and tried to smile. "You're thinking too much again," she said softly. "You always do when you're angry." "I'm not angry." She smiled sadly. "Then why are your fists clenched?" I looked down. She was right. The mansion lights glowed outside our tiny servants' room. I could hear the faint music from the Laurents' dining hall. I imagined them laughing, clinking glasses, their world full of everything I'd never have. "Mom," I said quietly, "why do we stay here? Why do you let them treat you like that?" Her eyes softened. "Because I made a promise." "To who?" She didn't answer. She just looked away, her lips pressed tight, as if the truth might shatter something fragile between us. That was the first time I noticed the tiredness in her eyes, not just from work, but from carrying a secret too heavy to speak. The next day, Elena passed me in the hallway, her perfume trailing behind her. She didn't say a word, but she smirked slightly, as if she could still see last night's humiliation written on my face. Something inside me cracked. I caught her arm. "Why did you do that?" I asked, my voice trembling. She blinked, surprised. "Do what?" "You humiliated me." Her lips curved into a lazy smile. "Oh, come on, Eli. It was a joke. Don't be so sensitive." "Sensitive?" "Yeah." She tilted her head. "You should learn your place. People like you don't belong at the table." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I said the only thing I could think of. "Maybe one day I will." She laughed, sharp and cruel. Dream on. That night, I didn't sleep. I stood by the window, staring at the mansion lights until they went out. Somewhere deep inside, a promise began to form, quiet and cold. One day, I thought, she'll regret every word, and I'll make sure of it. Chapter 2. The Night of Betrayal. The night it all fell apart smelled like rain and secrets. I couldn't sleep. The storm outside was whispering against the window, and somewhere in the house, voices echoed, low, tense, and hurried. I followed the sound down the dark hallway until I stopped outside the study door. My mother's voice came first, trembling. "You can't keep hiding it, Laurent. He deserves to know." Then Mr. Laurent's reply, sharp and tired. "You don't understand what's at stake. If this comes out, everything will collapse." I froze. He deserves to know. My chest tightened. They were talking about me. I leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. "He's your son," my mother whispered. "You owe him at least the truth." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush me. Then Mr. Laurent sighed. "It's too late. The family can never find out, especially Elena. She would." I stepped back, heart pounding. My hands shook. My mother and I had always been the outsiders in this house, but this changed everything. Before I could hear more, footsteps approached from behind. "Elena," I whispered, turning. She stood in the shadows, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "So, you like to eavesdrop now?" I swallowed. "You shouldn't be here." "I could say the same to you," she said coldly. "What were you listening to?" "Nothing." I lied. Her eyes narrowed. "You're lying." I said it's nothing. She stepped closer, her voice a low hiss. "You think you can sneak around this house and no one will notice? You're pathetic." I clenched my fists. "You don't know anything about me." She smirked. "Oh, I know enough. You're the housekeeper's son. That's all anyone needs to know." I wanted to scream, but I bit down the words. I turned away, walking back toward the servants' quarters. But before I left, I glanced back and saw her watching me with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. That fear made sense the next morning. I woke up to shouting. My mother's voice broke through the noise, pleading. "Please, I didn't take anything." I ran to the living room. The Laurents stood in a half circle. Mr. and Mrs. Laurent, Elena, and 2 security men. On the coffee table sat a velvet jewelry box, empty. Mrs. Laurent pointed at my mother. "We found her fingerprints. She stole my necklace." "That's impossible," I said. "She would never—" "Enough," Mrs. Laurent snapped. "We have proof." I turned to Elena. She was standing slightly behind her mother, arms folded, eyes cold. "Elena," I said, "tell them. You know she didn't do this." She looked at me, expression calm. "How would I know that?" "Because you were there. You saw her cleaning. You know she didn't steal anything." Her lips twitched. "Maybe I was wrong about her." The words hit me like a slap. "You planted it," I whispered. "Didn't you?" Elena's eyes flickered for a split second, then hardened. "Careful, Eli. You're just making this worse." "Enough." Mr. Laurent's voice cut through the air. "Maria, you've served us well, but this cannot be ignored. You'll have to leave." My mother's face went pale. "Please, Laurent, you know I would never—" "I'm sorry," he said, but his tone was flat. "My wife insists." "Sir, please," I said, stepping forward. "You know she's innocent." Eli, stop." My mother grabbed my arm, her eyes filled with quiet despair. "It's over." "No, it's not," I shouted. "They're lying." "Elena!" I turned to her again. "Say something." She met my gaze, and for a moment I thought she might. Then she said softly, "You were never one of us, Eli. It's time you remembered that." I felt the world tilt. The words were cold, final, and sharp enough to cut through bone. Security escorted us out. My mother carried a single suitcase. The rain had started again, falling harder than before. We reached the gate when I turned back. Elena was standing under the porch light, watching us go. I shouted over the storm, "You'll regret this." She didn't answer. She just turned and walked back inside. By the time the gates closed behind us, I realized what betrayal really felt like. It wasn't the pain. It was the silence that followed. Chapter 3. Cast Out. The rain didn't stop for 3 days after we were thrown out. It was like the sky itself was grieving for us, or mocking us. I couldn't tell which. We moved into a cramped one-room apartment on the edge of the city. The wallpaper peeled like old skin, and the ceiling leaked when it rained. My mother tried to make it home. She always did. She hung the same blue curtain she used to wash every week at the mansion, even though it smelled faintly of mold now. "I'll find work soon," she said, folding the few clothes we had left. "Don't you worry about me." I could hear the cough in her throat even then. It was small at first, barely noticeable, but each day it grew worse. "Mom, you should rest," I said one evening as she struggled to stand. She smiled weakly. "I've rested enough for a lifetime." I hated that smile. It was too calm for what they'd done to us. I spent my days looking for work, anything to pay the rent. Grocery stores, warehouses, gas stations. No one wanted a boy with no diploma and no connections. Every rejection felt like another echo of Elena's voice saying, "You don't belong at the table." At night, I'd lie awake listening to my mother's breathing, slow and uneven. Sometimes I'd dream about the mansion, the shining floors, the laughter, the sound of clinking glasses, and then I'd wake to dripping water and the sound of coughing. One evening, I came home to find her sitting by the window, a letter clutched in her trembling hand. "What's that?" I asked. She hid it quickly. "Nothing." "Mom." Her shoulders slumped. "It's from Mr. Laurent," she admitted. "He sent some money and a note. He said he's sorry." I snatched the letter and read it. "I hope this helps. Take care of yourself and your son." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just pity wrapped in guilt. "Why did you take it?" I demanded. "Because we need it." "I don't want their money," I shouted. "They threw us out like garbage." She looked at me, calm but tired. "Eli, hatred won't feed us." "Then I'll find another way," I said. "I'll make him pay for what he did, for what they did." Her voice softened. "Don't lose yourself trying to hurt them." I clenched my fists. "You're defending them even now?" "I'm defending you," she said quietly. That night, her cough got worse. She tried to hide it, but I could hear the blood in it. I begged her to see a doctor, but she refused. "We can't afford it," she said. "I'll be fine." She wasn't. One morning, I woke to silence. The air felt wrong. I turned to her bed and saw her lying there, eyes half open, lips parted as if she'd been about to say something. Her hand was cold when I touched it. I don't remember screaming, but the neighbors came running. I don't remember the funeral either, just the gray sky, the cheap coffin, and the sound of the shovel hitting dirt. I stood there long after everyone left. My clothes were soaked. I couldn't move. I whispered, "You said not to hate them, but how can I not?" The wind didn't answer. That night, I walked back to the mansion. I stood outside the tall iron gates, staring at the glowing windows beyond. My reflection stared back in the rain-covered metal, thin, hollow, angry. Somewhere inside that house, Elena was probably laughing, wearing the necklace that had cost my mother her life. I closed my eyes and whispered, "One day, I'll come back. And when I do, none of you will even recognize me." The words burned as they left my throat. I meant every one of them. That was the night I buried two things: my mother and the boy who used to believe silence was safety. From then on, I wasn't just the housekeeper's son. I was something else, something sharper, and I swore I'd make them remember me. Chapter 4. The return years change people. They can sand down the sharp edges or carve new shapes. For me, time built a mask that fit me better than the silence ever did. I left the city with nothing but a small bag and a promise. I worked nights, studied by stolen hours, and took every low job that would keep food in my stomach. I learned to listen to other people's mistakes, to find ways to make money where others saw waste. I took odd jobs in factories, warehouses, and then in a small accounting office. I learned numbers the way I had learned to wash dishes, by repetition, by muscle. Each step felt like a brick added to a bridge I was building toward them. "You look tired," Ryan said the first time we met, tossing a folder onto the table of the cramped cafe where I worked freelance. His voice was friendly but sharp. "You ever sleep?" "Sometimes," I said. "Not enough." "You need to stop surviving and start planning," he told me. "I like that in people. Makes them useful." I liked him immediately because he saw the hunger, not the stains on my shirt. Ryan became my friend, then my partner. He pushed me when I wanted to give up and celebrated in small ways when we managed to scrape enough to pay rent. He never asked where I came from. He asked where I wanted to go. I studied at night, taking online courses, learning business law and finance. I read company reports until my eyes burned. I saved every extra coin and invested little by little. People mocked my thrift. They called me stingy. I called it planning. When I finally returned to the city, it wasn't as the thin boy who had once hidden behind pans. I walked into a different world. Slick suits, polished shoes, and names that opened doors. I changed my name to Victor Laurent Holdings, a quiet joke at first, then a tool. Ryan laughed when I told him. Bold, he said. Risky. It'll work, I said. I needed them to see only the surface. Our company, small at first, grew because I was relentless. I made deals that others missed. I listened to what people wanted and gave it to them with terms that made them feel clever. Word spread. We bought a failing logistics firm and turned it around. We invested in real estate, then technology. Each victory was a step closer to the mansion where my mother had lived and died. The first time I saw Elena again, she didn't know me. She was thinner than I remembered, the arrogance still polished, but with cracks. She arrived at a business gala I attended with a group seeking investors. I noticed her before she saw me. Her laugh, the way she swept into the room like she owned it. She had that same smile, practiced and perfect. You're late, Ryan murmured. Keep your face neutral. I did. I let him approach her, let them talk. She spoke with the same confidence she had at 16, but now her nerves showed. She needed money. Her company was struggling. Victor Laurent, she said, looking at me as if trying to place the face. I'm Elena Laurent, small world. She didn't recognize the voice. She couldn't have known it was me. I studied her as she spoke, her hands, the way she tilted her head. She asked modest questions about our investments, about our interest in revitalizing old properties. I answered carefully, measured. I played the role of the investor she wanted to impress, benevolent, patient, and inscrutable. Later, she invited me to a private meeting at the Laurent estate, under the pretense of discussing a potential partnership. Standing in the doorway felt like stepping back into an old scar. The chandeliers were the same. The portraits hung in the same smug lines, but the air felt different. It smelled of fear and old money. You've come far, she said, eyes flicking over my suit. We could use someone like you. Maybe, I allowed, and my voice was calm, though my heart beat fast. Maybe we could help each other. She smiled, and for a moment I thought about the girl who used to steal toast. That thought died quickly. I had no place for soft memories anymore. That night, I left the mansion with an invitation and a promise folded into my pocket. Patience. I would wait for the right move. For now, I would be the man she needed, the investor she wanted to please. Underneath that polite mask, I planned every small step. Revenge, I decided, was not a single roaring fire. It was a careful architecture of pressure, leverage, and timing. I would build it brick by brick. Chapter 5. Strings of Revenge. I walked into Elena's world with my hands clean and my face polite. That was the plan. If I wanted to break what they had built, I could not storm the gates like a madman. I had to be calm, useful, and then sting them in places they never expected. Revenge is an art, not a shout. Elena, thank you for inviting me, I said as she led me through the familiar hallway. She held her chin high, but her fingers tapped the invitation card like someone counting losses. You look tired, she laughed. Business is exhausting. Investors keep asking the wrong questions. Then ask the right ones, I said. Ryan had coached me. What exactly do you need? She studied me. For a moment, a softer look flickered and died. We need cash flow. Payroll is due. If we don't secure funding, we might lose suppliers. I can help, but I'll need access to financials and a full audit. Her eyes narrowed. That's unusual for a private investor. Unusual works when a company is in trouble. I left with an assignment and a list of names. Ryan met me outside the gate, pale under the streetlight. You sure about this? He asked. I have to be. Over the next weeks, I became useful. I attended late meetings, suggested cuts, and praised staff who once looked after me. I listened more than I spoke. I offered small favors, an introduction to a vendor, a promising contract, and Elena began to rely on me. She thanked me once, her voice unguarded. I kept that moment like a needle behind glass. I pulled threads. Suppliers were paid late because Mrs. Laurent redirected funds to appearances, new art, charity, galas. The company was bleeding to keep a house that was already rotting. I found shell companies, friendly board members taking commissions, and invoices for dinners that bought nothing. The wealth existed, but was hidden and wasted. I fed facts to the right people, a word here, a document there, placed to look like a clerical error. I didn't want to destroy the company. I wanted control. When one vendor pulled their line and threatened legal action for non-payment, the board panicked. I offered a short bridge loan through my firm. It was small, enough to be noticed, but not enough to save them forever. They accepted, grateful and desperate. The loan came with conditions, transparency, an independent audit, and a seat for me on the oversight committee. Elena smiled when she signed. "You've been a lifesaver, Victor." The name felt like a small blade. I wondered if she felt it too. At night, I replayed my mother's face. I let anger warm me like a fire, but memory of her softness tempered my steps. Revenge had to feel clean, not cruel. I refused to be the monster's echo. Mrs. Laurent confronted me in the study one afternoon, accusation heavy in her tone. "You're changing everything too fast. Who are you, really?" "I'm an investor trying to help," I said. "I'm asking for rules because the company needs them." She laughed, brittle. "You don't know how to lead a family." "Maybe you don't know how to run a company," I returned. The words surprised me with how sharp they felt. She left wounded. I watched her go and felt pity for the life she would watch crumble because she could not stop spending to hide fear. Karma, I told myself, not my hands. Ryan and I worked in the margins. He managed the paperwork, smoothed over questions, and fed rumors like breadcrumbs. He would send me a message late, short, and precise. They took the bait. I'd smile alone in my apartment, feeling ridiculous. Sometimes I wondered if I was becoming what I wanted to punish. Ryan would look at me and say, "You're not him. You're not them." I wanted to believe him. Some nights the doubt crept in. Was I fixing a wound or tearing one open? The answer shifted. I found Elena in the garden that night, holding tea like it could soothe her. We spoke like strangers with a shared past. She confessed, halting, that she feared losing everything that gave her shape. "Do you ever think about what you did to my mother?" I asked. She flinched. "You think I wanted this?" I was scared. I thought if anyone found out, I'd lose everything. I did what I had to. "So did she," I said. "And she lost everything." Her eyes filled with weak regret. She had chosen not to stop it. I left her with the night pressing close. The strings I had pulled were tight now. Soon they would snap. I hoped that when they did, justice would be cleaner than my longing for revenge and healing. Chapter 6. The Hidden Truth. I didn't plan to reveal everything that night. Not yet. But secrets have a way of slipping through cracks, especially when fear and guilt are stacked high. Elena had asked me to review the company's quarterly report in her private office. I had walked in calmly, holding the folder like a polite investor. The chandelier glinted off the polished table. She didn't look at me immediately. She was busy scanning the numbers, lips pressed together. "You've been thorough," she said finally, "but I don't understand why you're so interested in the minor discrepancies. They're trivial." "Trivial?" I echoed, leaning on the edge of the table. "A missing 100,000 here, a hidden transfer there. Are these really trivial to you?" Her eyes flicked up at me, sharp and cautious. "It's just accounting, Victor. Don't make it personal." I smiled faintly. "Personal? Maybe. Or maybe it's about what's been hidden from you for years." Her hand froze mid-scroll. "Hidden? What are you—" I didn't answer. Instead, I placed the folder between us. "Look closer. Every number that doesn't add up, every late payment to vendors, every luxurious expense the board approved, it all points somewhere. Someone is hiding something, and it isn't just bad bookkeeping." She stared, lips parted. "You're implying—" "I'm implying that someone close to you, someone you trusted, manipulated everything while keeping up appearances, while letting your family—" I hesitated, tasting the words. "Let someone innocent be pushed aside." Her color changed. "Stop it." I leaned closer. "Do you remember the summer when the household seemed different? When you found fault with the people who were loyal?" Her hand trembled. She dropped the pen. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know. And I remember the laughter that followed when one mistake became someone else's blame. I remember the faces you ignored." She swallowed hard. "This isn't about—" "Isn't it?" I pressed, letting my voice dip low. almost a whisper. "Do you remember the housekeeper's son? The boy you dismissed, mocked, and humiliated?" Her breathing hitched. I am that boy," I said calmly, watching her face crumble as the words sank in. "The one you laughed at, the one you pushed out. I am the real heir, the one your family ignored, thinking appearances mattered more than truth." Her hands flew to her mouth. That's impossible. My father, my mother, they would have—" "No." I shook my head. "They never told you because the truth would have ruined your world. But here I am, the one who should have inherited everything you were born to inherit, the one you tried to erase." She staggered back, eyes wide, mouth open, as if the room had tilted beneath her. Why didn't you tell anyone?" I let a thin smile play across my lips. "Because I wanted them to see it. All of it. Your fear, your arrogance, the little cracks you ignored. I didn't want to storm in and demand respect. I wanted to let it collapse naturally. And now, you feel it, don't you?" She sank into a chair, hands trembling. I thought I knew everything. I thought I was in control." "You weren't," I said gently. "And that's why you're here, sitting across from me, realizing that appearances mean nothing when truth is finally visible. You're afraid because you see what's coming. And you're right to be." Her lips quivered. What will you do?" I leaned back, letting the tension fill the room. "What I should have done years ago. I'll take what's rightfully mine, and I'll watch as the world you built, brick by brick, unravels. But I'll be fair. I'll give you the chance to make amends, to show that you can be better than your mistakes. The rest is just consequence." She nodded slowly, tears threatening, voice breaking. I didn't know. I never knew." "I know," I said softly. "But now you do." And for the first time in years, I felt the power shift, not out of hatred, not out of cruelty, but because truth always carries its own weight, and it cannot be ignored. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The day I returned to the mansion for the first time as its rightful heir, everything felt different. The air was heavier, the silence louder. The familiar marble floors gleamed under chandeliers I had once polished with my mother, but now they reflected a world I was about to reshape. Elena stood in the foyer when I arrived. Her face was pale, eyes wide, hands gripping the railing. "Victor, don't," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "There's nothing to say that will undo the past." She swallowed, stepping closer. "I'm sorry, I never meant—" "You never meant?" I echoed, letting the words hang like ice between us. "You called me a housekeeper's son, humiliated my mother, and kicked us out. And now you want to apologize?" Her lips trembled. "I was young. I didn't know—" "Didn't know?" I snapped. "You knew perfectly well. You laughed while my mother cried. You ignored every warning, every sign, every plea. And now, you're pretending innocence?" She flinched, and I saw it. Fear, not of me, but of the consequences she had ignored for so long. I let her stew in it. I walked past her, toward the grand staircase, letting my presence fill every corner. Do you know what it's like to lose everything you've ever depended on? To watch the person you love suffer because someone else's pride is more important than life itself? She shook her head, silent. That was my life. And your arrogance, your selfishness, made it worse. I stopped, letting the words sink. I watched as my mother fell ill, as hope drained from her eyes, while you laughed and cared only for appearances. Tears glistened on her cheeks. I didn't realize. You didn't care," I said softly, almost whispering. "You still don't realize the damage your choices caused, and now the world is about to show you." She took a shaky step forward. "Victor, what will you do?" I turned to face her fully, letting the silence stretch. "What I should have done years ago. I'm taking back what's mine. The company, the estate, everything that was stolen from me. You can watch, or you can try to make amends, but make no mistake. I am in control now." Her hands trembled at her sides. I don't know how to... I can't... You can't, because you've spent years pretending strength instead of facing truth. I approached her slowly. "Do you feel that? The shift in power? The air itself bends because justice cannot be denied. She dropped her gaze, voice breaking. I never wanted this for you. I never wanted... I let my eyes burn into hers. But you chose it anyway. And every choice has consequences. The sound of my footsteps echoed across the grand hall as I circled her like a predator, calm and deliberate. You think you know fear. You have not felt it until you see your empire unravel. You think you know regret. You will feel it when every lie, every concealment, every selfish decision collapses under its own weight. She sobbed, weak and trembling, her pride crumbling. Please, don't ruin everything. I stopped, just inches from her. My voice dropped, quiet but deadly. I am not here to ruin. I am here to restore. Restore the life stolen from me. Restore the truth. Restore justice. And you will see what it means to have power slip through your fingers when you squander it carelessly. Her knees buckled slightly, and she sank into the nearest chair, tears streaking her face. Victor, you can start by facing what you've done, I said, stepping back. By accepting the truth, by finally understanding the weight of your choices. Everything else, the company, the estate, the world, you'll watch it unfold under my terms, and I promise it will be fair, but firm. I walked past her, toward the window overlooking the estate grounds. The wind whipped through the curtains, carrying the promise of change. For the first time, I felt the full weight of my transformation, from the boy they mocked and abandoned to the man who would claim what was rightfully his. Behind me, Elena whispered, barely audible, I understand. I didn't look back. Understanding was only the first step. The rest, reckoning, was coming. And this time, I would not be denied. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The morning sunlight cut through the grand windows, painting the room gold, but I felt nothing warm. The estate was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that waits for a storm. Today, everything would change. Elena was already at the conference table, documents scattered, hands trembling. Victor, I've called the board. They're expecting you, she said, voice wavering. Good, I replied, calm. My footsteps echoed through the hall as I approached. Every step reminded me of the boy I once was, the one they dismissed, laughed at, and shoved aside. That boy would have collapsed under the weight of fear. This man, this version of me, would rise above it. The board entered shortly after. I watched their faces tighten when I introduced myself, a stranger in their eyes, yet the rightful heir in reality. Murmurs spread, polite but tense. Victor Laurent, someone said. We didn't expect... I ignored them. I placed my hands on the table and looked each one in the eye. You've run this company with skill, I'll give you that. But your loyalty was to appearances, not truth. That ends today. Elena flinched. Victor, wait. No, I interrupted. It's time they understand. Every mismanaged fund, every cover-up, every decision that endangered this company, it will be corrected. I'm here to restore balance, and those responsible will face consequences. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. You can't. This is sudden. I can, I said firmly, and I will. Step aside or align with me. That is your choice. The room fell silent. I allowed them to stew in the tension. Then I began. Documents, emails, audits, all carefully collected over months, were spread before them. I explained each discrepancy, each hidden transaction, each betrayal. Their eyes widened as the scope became clear. Elena watched, silent and pale. I could see regret etched into her features, but also fear. This was what she had ignored for so long. This was the truth she could no longer escape. You see now, I said, voice calm but sharp, why I was pushed aside, why my mother's trust was violated. Every act of arrogance, every dismissal, every cruel word. It all led here. One of the senior managers tried to defend himself. It wasn't personal. We did what was necessary. Necessary, I repeated, voice rising just enough to echo. Necessary to destroy lives? Necessary to shield your incompetence? Necessary to pretend wealth mattered more than loyalty? They fell silent. I let my gaze sweep the room. Today, things change. Elena, you will run alongside me, or you will watch as your choices crumble. The board will operate under my rules, and I will decide who remains and who leaves. Fair, but firm. She looked at me, lips trembling. Victor, I You will start by acknowledging your mistakes, I said. Not with excuses, not with tears, but with action. Every step you take from now on must prove that you understand the weight of what happened. She nodded, voice breaking. I will. I will do whatever it takes. I leaned back, letting the tension ease just slightly. It wasn't revenge in its cruelest form, it was justice. And justice, when measured, leaves no room for ambiguity. Ryan stepped in beside me, a silent nod of support. Together, we would rebuild what was lost, correct the wrongs, and ensure the company and my legacy were secure. The day passed with meetings, calls, and decisions. By nightfall, the atmosphere had shifted. The fear had not vanished, but respect replaced some of it. Elena, still trembling, followed my guidance, listening, learning. Later, alone in the old study where my mother once sat, I ran my hands along the polished desk. Memories of mockery, hunger, and cold nights rose, but so did pride. I had survived, learned, and transformed. I was no longer the boy they dismissed. I was the man who reclaimed his life. And finally, as I looked out at the estate, I felt a sense of closure, not vengeance, not malice, just the steady, clean satisfaction of truth restored. The reckoning was complete. Tomorrow, the world would see the man I had become, and this time, nothing could stop me. Chapter 9. Epilogue. The house was quiet that evening. The chandeliers cast long, soft shadows across the walls, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh paper. I walked through the hallways slowly, letting memory wash over me. The boy I once was, the one laughed at and abandoned, now replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and unshakable. Elena moved beside me, silent but attentive. I could see the weight of everything we'd endured written in her eyes. She had begun to understand the consequences of her choices, the gravity of pride and arrogance. And yet, there was a spark, a possibility for redemption, if she truly wanted it. I paused at my mother's favorite window, gazing at the gardens where she had once tended roses with gentle hands. The memories of her warmth, her guidance, and her quiet strength filled me. She had been my anchor in the storm of ridicule and betrayal. Without her, I might never have survived, but I had, and I had transformed. You've changed everything, Elena whispered, breaking the silence. The company, the family, even me. I nodded, keeping my gaze fixed on the fading light. Change was always necessary, not just for me, but for everyone who ever ignored truth for convenience. I've given the world back its balance. The rest is up to them. Her lips quivered. Will you forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness was not a gift given lightly. It was a recognition of growth, of understanding, of accountability. Forgiveness, I said slowly, is earned through action, not words. Show me you've learned, Elena. Show me that you can face the truth and do what is right. Then, maybe. She nodded again, silently promising. I saw fear there. Yes, but also determination. Perhaps she could be different. Perhaps she could be better. I turned toward the estate, the city lights glimmering beyond the walls, a world that had once seemed unreachable, now within my grasp. The path ahead would not be simple. There would be challenges, rivalries, and consequences I could not yet foresee. But I felt ready. Strong. Certain. I had survived betrayal, reclaimed my place, and learned the true value of patience and strategy. Ryan joined me quietly, a knowing smile on his face. They've started to listen, he said softly. Even Elena. I nodded. Good. Let them learn what it means to face the consequences of their actions. Let them understand that life is measured by the choices we make, not the appearances we maintain. As the night settled, I felt a rare stillness within me, a quiet triumph that no one could take away. I had not just reclaimed my inheritance, I had reclaimed myself. The boy who had been dismissed, humiliated, and ignored was gone. In his place stood a man forged by betrayal, tempered by patience, and guided by the memory of love lost. And somewhere in the distance, I knew this was only the beginning. The world could challenge me again, but now I was ready, stronger, smarter, unshakable. I closed my eyes and breathed in the night air. Justice had been served, truth had been restored, and I, finally, was free.